Hi, my name is Mary Black, and today I want to teach you about tax. Now, most people hate tax. They hate the idea of it. It's so scary. It's just horrible. And yet, that's most people. And then there are a small group of people who love it and who think it's amazing. And I'm one of those people. And why is that? Because I think it's one of the greatest games ever created. You have this really complex set of rules and you get all these new situations that you have to deal with. And the idea is, how many different rules can I apply to reduce somebody's tax to zero, or at least as low as humanly possible? Now, so what is tax? Where did it come from? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today. So tax is a means by which the government is able to finance their expenditures by imposing charges on individuals and corporations. We'll talk about the different types of taxes in another episode, but today let's talk about where the tax actually came from. So this all began in the United States in 1634. English colonists had just formed the Massachusetts Bay Colony and enacted their first income tax. This was a tax of $1 imposed to help support religion. This tax is the impetus of both the Boston Tea Party as well as the First Amendment religion clauses. Several hundred years later, in 1861, this is when the first governmental income tax was started. Both the Union and the Confederacy during the Civil War imposed an individual income tax to support the war efforts on both sides. And the maximum rate was 5%. Now, this individual income tax was enacted to essentially, it was a response for the high excise or sales taxes that there were. There was the stamp tax, there were tobacco taxes, sugar taxes, there were taxes on everything. And it was very regressive program because it mostly impacted the poor negatively. And so this 5% income tax was enacted, and combined, the Union and the Confederacy were able to raise over $300 million. The court held that the Civil War tax was constitutional, which is kind of surprising because during that time the Constitution stated that tax was only allowed to be imposed per capita or per head. It was not apportioned according to population, essentially. And so, but it was a limited amount of time that this tax was going to be imposed, from 1862 to 1872, to pay for the war effort. And so that's the political reasons are the reasons why it was held to be constitutional. Then in 1894, several years later, a new income tax was imposed to pay for expenditures of the government. Well, in 1895, Pollack v. Farmers Loan Trust Company challenged the constitutionality of this income tax. There are two parts of this case. First was the income tax, second was the corporate tax that was enacted at the same time. And the individual income tax was shot down for being unconstitutional because the Constitution prohibited taxes, direct taxes, unless they were apportioned between the states in accordance to population. Second, the franchise tax or the corporate tax was held to be constitutional because it was a tax on the right to perform business. And that was not found to be any sort of violation of the Constitution. So again, in 1913, Congress decided to try again to enact an individual income tax. And Congress ratified the 16th Amendment at that time, which provides for an income tax by stating this: "The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration, thereby completely avoiding the apportionment between the states according to population portion of the Constitution through the Bill of Rights. So the first income tax was enacted on March 1st, 1914. You had to pay between 2% and 6%, 6% for incomes over $500,000. Amazing! And you received a personal exemption of $3,000 if you were single and $4,000 if you were married. Now, my great-grandfather and grandmother had to pay $2 in tax. That's right, $2. And they were bitter thereafter because nobody wants to pay tax. That's the thing. Nobody wants to pay tax, but in order for our government to actually work and to be able to pay for their expenditures, there has to be some sort of a tax. Now, the reason why Congress has wanted there to be an individual income tax is because income tax accounts for about 60% of all the taxes collected in the United States. Therefore, there's a reason why the income tax was so desirable. Now, there are lots of constitutional issues. You saw it from the very beginning. There shouldn't be a tax on religion for supporting any religion. Why would there be an income tax during the Civil War when there was a constitutional issue there? And there have been issues with constitutionality that have been brought up over the years. And periodically there will be a giant IRS sting where there is an individual or a group of individuals who hold up in their home with guns saying, we're not paying our income tax because it's unconstitutional. Well, in 1913, Congress ratified it and made it constitutional. So if you ever get into a situation where somebody's saying it's not constitutional, they're wrong. And you should not get involved in any of those schemes because this constitutional clause has never been overturned. In fact, the idea of being able to tax the public is frequently used to be able to pay for certain things like the Affordable Health Care Act several years ago. Okay, so after 1913, there began to be a series of different tax laws that were enacted, and they were riddled throughout the federal code. And so in 1939, the Congress put together the Internal Revenue Code of 1939. They took all of the tax codes and put it all in one place because tax practitioners and tax preparers were having a difficult time figuring out where are the tax laws, what do they say, and where do I find them? And so there was a codification in 1939. Again, there was a codification in 1954 to add additional revenue code. And then again, there was one in 1986. And so today we are working out of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. That's the end of our history lesson on tax today. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like the series so far, feel free to subscribe. And if you have any questions, write a comment in the comment box below, or feel free to email me at centerfortaxstudies@gmail.com. Hope to hear from you soon, and we'll see you next time.